The Indianapolis Colts have officially released their first unofficial depth chart of the season. And there are a lot of names on this thing, so we're going to get right into it. Okay, for quarterback, it says Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson. If you've been watching the channel, you've been keeping up, or you've been reading news somewhere about the Colts, you know they've been switching reps, Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, on first team and second team pretty much every practice. And then obviously Sam Ellinger is a third quarterback. And going into Buffalo, it'll be interesting to see who is actually going to be starting for the Colts at quarterback. I feel like it might be Anthony Richardson, just so you can kind of keep him safe. You give him only one or two series, and then you can take him out. But we'll be keeping our ears to the grindstone to see what's really happening, to see if there are any changes or if there are any decisions made on that front. Okay, then we look at running back. Now, on the depth chart, you have Jonathan Taylor, then Zach Moss. Both of those guys obviously not around. We don't know if Jonathan Taylor is going to be around. Zach Moss has a broken arm right now. Deion Jackson stepped away from the team from Tuesday's practice. We'll have to see when he comes back. So currently, the active running back that we know of that is on the top of the depth chart is the rookie Evan Hull. And as of today, Kareem Hunt's supposed to be visiting Indianapolis. The news of that has not come out yet, but we will be eagerly awaiting that news to see what happens. And if they sign him, you have to imagine Kareem Hunt probably going to catapult right up to the front on this depth chart. Now, behind Evan Hull, there's Jake Funk and Xavier Scott, but also Kenyon Drake. You have to presume Kenyon Drake's at the bottom of the depth chart just because he's the newest guy. He's still learning the install while the offense is pretty much finishing their install right now. But it will be interesting to see if Kenyon Drake is somebody that can end up making this roster. All right, now the fun stuff. Let's talk about wide receivers, where you're going to have Michael Pittman Jr. as the number one. Alec Pierce is the number two, of course. And at the moment, Isaiah McKenzie is slotted in as wide receiver number three, presumably being the slot position. And if you look at the wide receiver depth, the wide receivers behind Michael Pittman are Ashton Dulin, Brashad Perriman, Malik Turner. Wide receivers behind Alec Pierce are Mike Strawn, Jawan Winfrey, and Vincent Smith. The wide receivers behind Isaiah McKenzie are Josh Downs, Amari Rogers, and Cody Case. When you look at all those wide receivers, there are names that jump out at you, right? Like, look at what the Colts did this offseason. They were able to bring in Brashad Perriman, bring in Isaiah McKenzie, bring in Amari Rogers very recently, and they drafted Josh Downs and all those guys to accompany Michael Pittman Jr. and Alec Pierce, who is said to have taken a pretty big step in his development, and people are thinking he's going to be really, really good this season. So I'm very excited about this wide receiver group, especially if Mike Strawn can actually do something this season. You know, we've been talking about him for years. Colts fans have been hearing that name for years in training camp, and then during the season, nothing materializes. So it'll be interesting to see how this wide receiver group stacks up. And the most intriguing thing to watch here is going to be Isaiah McKenzie versus Josh Downs, and to see who's going to get reps as we go into the regular season and who's a starter going into the regular season. And with Isaiah McKenzie having the experience that he has, it makes sense for him to get the start and to have Josh Downs, still play a role in the offense, but to more see how to be a pro from Isaiah McKenzie. But in my opinion, there's no doubt that Josh Downs is the more talented of the two. And that'll probably, cream rises to the top by the end of the season. I think Josh Downs will have a more prominent role, but starting out, I don't blame the Colts at all for having Isaiah McKenzie as a starter there. Okay, so now we move on to the offensive line, where left tackle is Bernard Raymond, left guard, Big Q, Quentin Nelson, center, Ryan Kelly. Right now, right guard, it's Will Fries, who they like the development of him, and they think that he can be a guy that they can rely on. And of course, to finish it off is right tackle Braden Smith. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses on this team is the depth on the offensive line. We're really going to need these guys to stay healthy, which in years past has been a bit of an issue. So, a little bit of luck goes into being successful in the NFL. So if the Colts want to have success, we're going to need to get a little lucky there because, Danny Pinter, he's all right, but can we really depend on him in the past? Not really. Wesley French, same thing. Blake Freeland, same thing. Just a lot of names that we're not real sure about as depth pieces on this offensive line. But then the defensive line is a totally different thing, right? You have Kwity Paye as a starter on one end, Samson Ebukam as a starter on the other end. Then you have DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart manning the middle of that defensive line. But then you look at all the names that are behind these guys on the depth chart, right? It's not a bunch of superstars on this roster, but you have Tyquan Lewis as a backup to Kwity Paye. Then you have Dio Dangbo and Al-Qadim Muhammad backing up Samson Ebukam. And then you go into the middle. They were able to get Taven Bryan in this offseason to back up DeForest Buckner. And in nose tackle behind Grover Stewart, they have Eric Johnson, and they drafted Ade Ade. So overall, like the starters on this team, I think can be really good. I think this can be one of the better defensive fronts in the NFL if Kwity is really coming along. Like we've had a lot of hype for Kwity. I think last year could have been a really good year for Kwity. He just was dealing with injuries a lot. If he can stay healthy, I think he can really produce and really have a real breakout season for the Colts this season. And then obviously DeForest Buckner is one of the best football players in the world. Grover Stewart is getting better every single season. And then Samson Ebukam coming from the 49ers. I think him and Dio trading out. I think we are solid on the defensive front this season. Okay. And then you look at the linebackers, we're always solid there. Chris Ballard is pretty much always solid with linebackers. Obviously, you have Shaq and EJ Speed. Zaire Franklin's in there. And those are your starters. But then you look at the other names. Grant Stewart, he's more of a special teams ace, right? But Colts always have one of the best special teams groups in the league, and he's a big part of that right now. Segan Alubi's been making plays in practice this year. He was signed to the Colts practice squad last year and spent the year there. This year, he's been making plays, and right now he's getting reps with the second team. So he's kind of doing his thing in training camp. And then Cameron McGrone, another guy that's making things happen in training camp, taking reps with the second team. He's backing up EJ Speed. Okay, and this is the part that we're really all interested in here is going to be the secondary. What's going on in the secondary? And in the first unofficial depth chart of the season, very interesting name is here at cornerback, and that is DJ Darrell Baker Jr., somebody that we've talked about so much on this channel. And all the work that he's put in is being paid off by being put into the starting lineup for the upcoming Bills game. We're going to see if it's going to last. Behind him is Juju Brents. And Juju Brents is supposed to be really good, but he just started practicing again. So it'll be interesting to see if Darrell Baker stays in the starting lineup as we go into the rest of the preseason and into the regular season. But right now, again, the work paying off for Darrell Baker Jr. And then you go to the other side of the field, the other cornerback spot. Right now, it's Dallas Flowers. This is another situation where the work a guy's putting in is paying off because a rookie was missing parts of training camp, right? So Darius Rush and Jalen Jones both are backing up Dallas Flowers, but they're letting the veteran get the opportunity in the upcoming preseason game. And so, again, Jalen Jones also, he's drafted in the 7th round this year. Again, a name we haven't brought up a whole lot. We talked about him a few days ago in one of the training camp videos, but a guy that we're going to be keeping an eye on because, again, drafted in the 7th round at cornerback, but there were also 2 other cornerbacks drafted in this draft by Chris Ballard and his staff. So we're going to be watching to see what happens with all the rookies, or do they let the veterans go into the regular season as the starters? We'll be keeping a very close eye on that, but a lot of names to watch right now and a lot of potential on this roster at those positions. Okay, and then finishing up, nickel cornerback is obviously Kenny Moore. Behind him is Tony Brown, Chris Lamons, who is going to be suspended for the first 3 games of the season, and Michael Tutsi. And finishing up this depth chart, we're looking at safety where we have Rodney Thomas as a starting free safety and Julian Blackmon as a starting strong safety. Now, both of these guys missed practice on Tuesday, so we'll be seeing and waiting to see. So we'll be waiting to see if these guys practice on Thursday and if they're going to be active for Saturday. Because if you look who's behind them, we know Nick Cross, while Julian Blackmon was out, was getting reps at strong safety. Now that Rodney Thomas is out also, he was getting reps at free safety. So then they had Trevor Denbo taking reps at strong safety. So if Rodney Thomas and Julian Blackmon are both out, that would be who I think is probably going to get the start in the preseason game would be Nick Cross and Trevor Denbo. But behind him, Marcel Dabo, I'm very curious to see what he's going to be able to do. How does he look? I'm going to be looking for him specifically in the preseason game. If you don't know that name, he was given to the Colts in part of it's a program, an overseas program that the NFL does every season. Each team will get one player from overseas to come and join them, and doesn't count as one of the people on the roster. But last year, Marcel Dabo, he has his athletic profile is crazy. He's a crazy freak athlete from Germany. And there's a lot of potential there, but there's also now a pretty good amount of depth at safety on this team. So again, very curious what he's going to be able to do. And if he doesn't make this roster, does he do enough to make another roster? So, just something I'm watching for. Maybe some of you will be curious about that story also. But that is going to conclude the Colts' first unofficial depth chart breakdown. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was there anything that surprised you? Was there anything that you were very excited about? You let me know down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe with notifications on to stay up to date on all Colts news. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you for the next video.